This is Chicago's Morning Answer
California is going to pull the plug on its billion-dollar bullet train.
on AM 560.
The latest estimate for completion was set for 2033, and yet that would still have been completed before the Byrne interchange.
The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. There have been a lot of pronouncements over the last 2 weeks on socialism in favor of it. I mean, except as it is actually practiced in places like Venezuela. Dan Henninger, writing the Wall Street Journal, as we sort of laugh about some of the pronouncements from Ocasio-Cortez in the form of her GND.
And now Beto O'Rourke supporting her idea and pushing it further, saying Houstonians should move out before 12 years.
The number of Democrats who have signed on not just to the GND, but to the end times predictions over our existential threat, the existential threat we face from plastic bags and plastic straws and storms. Dan Henninger in the Wall Street Journal, though, no laughing matter. Something called socialism is in the air. Should we worry? The answer is yes, if you can stop laughing. Well, it's not funny, I'll tell you, when Elizabeth Warren, in promoting her ideas of breaking up the big tech companies, says, and I'm quoting, "Markets without rules are theft." These are Orwellian times where, by what she means when she says markets, free, mutually beneficial exchange between consenting adults of goods and services. That's theft. Government coming in and deciding, Apple, you can either operate the platform or you can sell apps. You can't do both. That's not theft. Proposals to increase the payroll tax to fund that pyramid scheme called Social Security. That's not theft, taking the fruits of other people's labor. Only private action between private individuals that doesn't cut the government in is theft. Remarkable times, really. For more on this topic, pleased to be joined by Don Boudreaux. He is one of the free marketeers over at George Mason University, one of the last bastions of free market thinking in the country. He's the director of the program on the American economy and globalization at the Mercatus Center at GMU. He's also a contributor where I read his stuff regularly at Cafe Hayek, which is a blog I encourage you to check out. Don Boudreaux, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here.
So, setting aside the substance of AOC's understanding of economics for the moment, do you agree with Dan Henninger?
You found some?
Well, yes, but I mean, do you agree with Dan Henninger that you can laugh at her Valley Girl voice and the things that she says and her complete lack of understanding of basic Econ 101 concepts, but you can't laugh at the popularity, and that's something to be concerned about?
It is. These are really scary times, as you say, and she is a scary woman. She's propelled by ignorance. She's nothing but an economic ignoramus. There's no other way to describe it. And the fact that people, presumably serious people, are flocking to her call is very disturbing. In that same Henninger piece that you mentioned, she's quoted as saying that she believes that capitalism is irredeemable.
Right.
So she basically wants to sweep away the economic system that has given us the highest standard of living in history, and replace it with socialism, which has never worked anywhere that it's been tried.
Do you think AOC and the others are aware of what's going on in Venezuela?
I'm sure they're aware of it, but they can explain that away. The typical way the left explains that is, it's corruption and mismanagement. But of course, successful economies aren't managed. Successful economies are free markets. They're spontaneous orders where people trade and entrepreneurs enter and innovate. Venezuela's problems are caused by a heavy hand of government, particularly the price controls that have been in place there, the monetary mischief that's going on there. She would say, that's not the socialism the way we would do. We'll do socialism better. That's what all the socialists say. They'll always do it better. They never do, of course. It always winds up being the same calamity that it's been in the past. But in the future, the allegations that it will always somehow be different.
How do you think we should approach it in terms of trying to explain and make the argument to people that are well-intended and just uninformed or ill-informed, misinformed? Because what the left is very good at doing is picking the right scapegoats and just beating them to death and forcing us into positions of defending big tech or defending big oil, positions I don't want to be in. I don't want to be defending rent seekers. I don't want to be defending people who violate privacy agreements. But you have to make the case of you defend people that you disagree with on the principle, because the principle is widely applicable, and the force of government, as Elizabeth Warren would mete it out, is widely applicable too in terms of the damage it inflicts.
You asked the $64 trillion question, how to get the message across. I think about that every day. Unfortunately, I don't think there is a magic bullet. You just have to keep making the case, as it sounds like you do on your program. When Elizabeth Warren, for example, points out that markets without rules are theft. What I would say in response to that is, look, markets necessarily have rules. Of course, markets are built on private property, the law of contract, and tort. These are rules. These are not designed by politicians and by bureaucrats, but these are rules. And when government comes in with legislation and regulation, that's actually breaking the rules. That's politicians imposing their own will on the market process. And so, to answer your question, we just have to beat down these myths as they arise. And I understand it's like playing whack-a-mole, because you knock one down, and then as soon as you get it down, another one pops up. It's one you knocked down just yesterday. It pops up again, and people are repeating it as if they hadn't heard the rebuttal just a few days ago. But we are in a battle for the soul of civilization, I think. I mean, that sounds kind of dramatic, but the turn to this wacky leftism, mixed with what I regard as being a somewhat scary populism that runs across the left and the right. These are scary times, and so we have to step up to the plate and actually be more clear and be more vigorous in our defense of free markets.
And perhaps be more simple, too, and more tangible. It seems to me and I do it, too. You talk about markets, you talk about economic principles, but here's a market. You going to your local farmer's market and buying fruit. That's a market. The market is human beings just interchanging with one another voluntarily. And government, also comprised of human beings, not superhuman beings, come in and tell you and the seller that they know better than you two.
Right, and here's one of the rules of that very market. The rule in the farmer's market is you don't get to take the avocado unless you pay for it, and the person is not allowed to take your money unless they give you something in return for it that you agree to purchase. That's a rule. That's a basic rule of the market. And Elizabeth Warren and AOC, they talk about markets as if they don't have these rules, as if the only rules that exist are ones that are dreamed up by politicians. And that's just an error.
Well, do you think in 2020 the Democrats are going to choose Bernie Sanders, who's obviously a socialist, or a more moderate Biden?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm pulling for Joe Biden. Because I disagree with him substantively on almost everything, but compared to Bernie Sanders, compared to Kamala Harris is now saying, compared to Beto O'Rourke, he's in my view, the least dangerous of the bunch.
I want to get your take on a Connecticut Supreme Court decision, state Supreme Court decision, on guns, and the prospect the Connecticut Supreme Court has opened up of exposing companies to product liability and wrongful death suits for the illegal use of an otherwise legal product. This, of course, is the Remington Arms case, the families of Sandy Hook victims suing the maker of an AR-15, suggesting without evidence that they purposely market to, I guess, people that are, marginally attached to reality, who are more likely to commit horrific crimes like was committed in Newtown than others. There's no evidence to support that, but the Supreme Court has given those plaintiffs the green light to go on a fishing expedition, and what kind of precedent that could set.
Awful. It does two things, at least, that are scary. It removes responsibility or dilutes responsibility from where it actually belongs on the people who actually misuse the product, the murderers, and it puts responsibility where it doesn't belong. If I sell you a car, if I'm a car salesman, I sell you a car and you use it to mow down people in a pedestrian mall, do you sue me? I mean, it's the same. Where does this stop? The responsibility is clear. This is not even a difficult issue in my view. If someone shoots an innocent person with a gun, stabs that person with a knife, runs them over with the car, that's the responsible party, not the maker of the car, not the maker of the knife, not the maker of the gun, not the seller of those things. It's the person who actually uses the things to do wrong. This has been a rule in Anglo-American law going back to long before the Pilgrims came to the United States. I don't see any reason why that should be changed now.
He is Don Boudreaux. He's an economist, author, professor at George Mason University. He directs the program on American economy, globalization at the Mercatus Center. And also, again, you can get his writings at Cafe Hayek. That's where I usually do. Don Boudreaux, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Cafe Hayek, isn't that where your dog goes?
He also reads Cafe. Hayek also reads Cafe Hayek. That's right.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey guys, Ken here.